What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. Go follow me at COJAC Podcast. And that's all that my intro is these days. But I'm real excited for this show. I have three awesome guys that I talk to all the time. And I'm just so bored of current events. I don't care that much. I don't know enough, who's connected to. I think I love history. So I brought on guys that love history as much. So Phil, welcome back. You've been on the show many times. How are you doing, dude?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Nice. And of course, Oddman, a staple. Oddman, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Nice. And Colby, Phil was actually the first person I ever had that I had on twice in a row. So you're now in the same class as Phil. So congratulations. That's
good
quite
company.
A special group.
Thank you.
But so I told everybody, I tweeted about how we all have a topic we were going to talk about. But before we started, I kind of already talked to Phil and Colby about it, but Oddman wasn't. But so, I don't know if you saw that the Pope before this Pope, what was his name? Who knows that? What was this? Benedict. Whatever. The Pope before this.
I think it was Benedict. Yeah.
Benedict. Okay. He wrote a book that he's to release when he died. And so they released it here. I'll share the screen so you can see it. And, in this book, he made these crazy. So he talks about how the seminaries have these gay clubs in them and that they have girlfriends and children that come and stuff like that. Talks about how there's Catholic priests in these seminaries that are trying to modernize the faith. Whatever, what that means is. And if they were caught reading any of his books, the students, they were considered unfit for the priesthood. I wanted to get those are two of the big ones. But yeah, so I just thought this is the book, Bennett, and no Western news media has brought it up at all. And I just thought it was this was released, he died, a week, 2 weeks ago, very recently. But I just thought that was fascinating, we all know this stuff goes on, that there's something very sinister inside the Catholic Church, but I just thought that was crazy that it came from a Pope's book, that he admitted these things and talked about them. So I don't know if you had any thoughts.
Which one of us?
Oh, you. Yeah, I'll do you, and then we'll go around. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I didn't know anything about it, to be honest with you. And it's kind of weird because I just can't help but think, why not? I kind of understand why you wouldn't want to release it while you were alive, because you might die earlier than you're planning. But I don't know. It's like when somebody dies and then you release a book, you can't really prove it's his words. So it's I don't know. Obviously, like you said, we know that these kind of things are going on. But yeah, that's very interesting that I guess it shouldn't be surprising that the American media is not talking about it, but this could potentially be huge. It could kind of finish off the Catholic Church in a way, because what I've been telling people looking into the Jesuits and whatnot, I don't doubt that they do have quite a bit of power. I do believe they had a lot of power at one time, but the Catholic Church in the last 25, 30 years has not done, it's like they haven't even tried to defend themselves or make good cases for anything. It's just it's the strangest. Their PR is total shite. And have you guys noticed that? It's they don't even, and when these sexual allegations come up, it's not like they tried to make when they first started kind of making the mainstream and people couldn't deny it any longer. They didn't try to make kind of examples out of these guys. They just sent them off to some other diocese halfway across the world. And so it just, kind of showed the world that, hey, look, they're not even serious about trying to change these horrible abuses. So I don't know.
That's a good
I guess
point.
I got kind of off on a tangent.
No, you did. It's really, you're right. Why is there this organization has more money than God. No pun intended. You can't afford a good marketing company to spin or to tell you not to do this. I don't know. Phil, any thoughts?
Have you guys seen Spotlight, the movie they did about so it just made me think, as Oddman was talking about, just thinking about the kids who couldn't tell their parents. Why? Because the church was such a huge institution in our life, and who do you trust more than your local priest? I think in certain aspects, the Catholic Church doesn't need any marketing because in the end, people's faith is strong that they'll never question it. Now, not everybody, but I mean, just, you think after a while, some people's faith is so ingrained, like, oh, it's one bad apple, not paying attention to the Opus Deis, the Pope Benedict. I mean, what was it? Cardinal Law, who was, covering up a lot of issues in the Boston diocese and everything like that. Cardinal Spellman in New York. That's someone whose name came up back in the 50s. He was a pedophile. All these things. He comes up a lot because he was connected to who was it? J. Edgar Hoover, Roy Cohn, all those guys.
Okay.
He comes up in Whitney Webb's book. And but Spellman, that was another one. So it's like after a while, it's been going on for so long. Some people might just be more inclined to be like, not get as bothered by it, even though it is a serious problem. There is a rot that's in the church, and it goes to the Vatican and everything, and I mean, I think the Vatican Bank is like one of the most protected financial institutions. I think people have called for that to be audited, like the Federal Reserve, and you can't even get into there. So I think in the end, this is something they're going to overlook. I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, if they had a English version that I could read, I would definitely be interested in, stuff like that. I mean, when I read David Yallop's In God's Name about John Paul I years ago, I said that stunned me, and some of the Gladio books since then, it's just like, there's a lot of problems there.
And tell people who's that Pope, because I'm sure I wouldn't know, only just what we were just talking before.
Oh, with the Vatican Bank?
Yeah, the guy who was killed.
Yeah, that was John Paul I. So everyone thinks of John Paul II, who was Cold Warrior type and good friends with Reagan. I think him and Reagan only died about a year apart from each other. But John Paul I is Albino Luciani was his name, and they called him the Smiling Pope. And he was dead within 33 days, and he had plans to change, I mean, allegedly the institution itself, get rid of the head of the Vatican Bank, transfer, if not, maybe force a couple of cardinals to resign. And there was going to be a lot of changes. And then next thing you know, he dies. Pope John Paul II says he's going to continue on, and then he gets shot. And then next thing you know, it's like everything just kind of.
I forgot he got shot.
Yeah.
Damn. Colby, I'm sorry you're last. I hate being last when there's like a round table, but any thoughts on the
that way I could just clean up on stuff that you guys said. I wouldn't have had ideas on what to talk about. So, I mean, when you were listing all the stuff that was just disclosed upon this guy's death, I half expected you to say drag queen story hour. Like, sounds like there's a lot of shit going on. And kind of, you and I had a conversation last night about how all the eyes being on the allegations that come out of the Catholic Church is kind of prominent. Nobody ever questions it. So when stuff like this happens, I kind of just, I always ask myself, like, well, they want us looking at this part. So what else is going on right now? I mean, we always talk about the Vatican. We always talk about the Jesuits and the sexual allegations that are coming out of the Catholic Church. They're just never ending. They, like Oddman said, they don't even really offer much of a defense anymore. So yeah, I always think back to, okay, is this a red herring for something else? And it is also just the first time I've heard about it as well. Just sitting down tonight. So
no, that was an awesome cleanup. Just so you know, dude, that was great.
Thank you.
I wish I could come and clean up like that. But we'll start with Phil's topic first, since you kind of alluded to it. And so take it away, my man.
All right. Actually, so it was tough because I was trying to think. I'm still like halfway into the Whitney Webb book.
Yeah.
But I figured I'd do this one that I just did for review. The Riders Come Out at Night, which is about police corruption in Oakland. And so just finished this about a week or so ago. The city of Oakland is still under what they call a consent decree, which is kind of like government oversight that's been going on since 2003 and relates to basically police beatings, like excessive force complaints. And it was by a group specifically that they zeroed in on that were called the Riders. And it's one guy who was kind of a trainee, like almost kind of like a training day scenario, had been a cop for 17 days. And he made a complaint about one of his superior officers and that these guys were going out They were using excessive force, beating suspects, falsifying reports, planning evidence, and it led to a lawsuit. And even though a lot of the cops didn't, what they got was slap on the wrist, a lawsuit that came out of it was that the Oakland Police Department would be subject to having to go through like a certain amount of prerequisites before they would take this kind of like monitoring government intervention off. And they're still under it. This year.
They're still under it?
Yep, 20 years.
Holy shit.
20 years. Yeah. So
it's run by the federal government, the program or whatever.
I believe it's overseen by the US DOJ. There is a monitor who I believe is paid by the government. But yeah, so I mean, just reading this book, I was just like, holy crap. There's times you could be like, okay, maybe it's a left-leaning thing, because the left doesn't want the cops.
Right.
For the most part. But no, there's enough in here where you're like, Jesus. I mean, they mentioned stories going back to the 20s and 30s. I had no idea that the Klan was very heavy out in California.
Oh, I didn't either.
Yeah, they said at one point the LAPD chief, the Oakland chief, a few other chiefs were all Klansmen. They would be used to, union bust, beat up, any union problems or whatnot, because, unions were always connected to socialists or subversives.
Right.
And also talking about like when they had issues with the Black Panthers, they had actually shot and killed one of the Black Panthers in the late 60s, a guy named Bobby Hutton. And later on, they were like, oh, it was self-defense. He had a gun. And then later they're like, they sent in tear gas. He was practically naked. He didn't have a gun on him. And, who knows? Back then, they might have been a drop gun planted.
Right. Was that the one that Hoover was behind? Like he was a rat and he was, or like they made them think he was a rat maybe or something like that? Or no?
Well, wouldn't be surprised with COINTELPRO if he kind of seeded the narrative that there was probably an agent provocateur in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't believe Hutton was, but
yeah, I think I'm wrong.
He could have been, in the 60s, you had Fred Hampton, who's like 20 years old, getting killed in Chicago. I think they shot over 100 shots into his bedroom for his alleged one shot. And a guy named Mark Clark, they were both set up to be killed. And there was someone there who was kind of like on the inside. I think they just had, what was it? They just had a movie about that. Judas and the Black Messiah or something like that. And I think it was about Fred Hampton. And you had multiple. There was a guy named Bunchy Carter who was in LA. He was murdered. He was a Black Panther. So a lot of the blame for that has been laid at COINTELPRO and, the FBI working with local police departments in those cases. So it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I read this book, like part of the issue is, you have San Francisco being the big city that it is, it gets all the attention. Oakland suffered from just like financial, just kind of albatross, lost a lot of money. The white population, white flight, just moved. And then, there really wasn't too much of a crime issue until the war on drugs kind of got kicked into high gear. And of course, they even make mention of the crack cocaine epidemic and the Dark Alliance story and, the Contras, so I was kind of shocked to see that, but pleasantly surprised. It's nice to see that in the mainstream book, someone actually still referenced that. And as the crime went up and you had the gang shootings and whatnot, they wanted more of a police presence. They wanted a little bit more heavy law and order. And one of the people who'd eventually be mayor of Oakland was Jerry Brown. Now, Jerry Brown was multi-term governor of California. I think he was like at least 2-3-time presidential candidate. And they called him Governor Moonbeam because he wanted to have California have their own space program. And he at first was like more of a progressive approach to law enforcement, but then eventually he's like, you know what? No, we need more cops. We need more of a presence, more arrests. Well, if you start telling these guys to make sure that, bringing in any charge, keep writing summonses, this and that, eventually you're going to get guys who start, busting heads. It's not to excuse it. It's just to say you want results and these guys are going to give it to you.
Yeah.
And, not to mention over time, you've had these police departments that are getting weapons from the military, I mean, which is that's one of my key issues, the militarization of the police. I mean, it's bad enough you got some of these guys who are already have been indoctrinated because they're former Marines or, Army guys. So they already got that sort of warped perspective already. And then they're bringing it on the streets. I said, it leads to all sorts of problems. And in the end, that's what's happened.
In David McGowan's book, he talks about how in Texas, they right before the one serial killer, they had a big progressive, let's give people second chances. And they released them. And within 16 hours, he killed 3 more people. And so and then they said, no, now we need to crack down. And then so I wonder, do you see that? Because you see this today, we see let's be, come on, they're drug addicts. It's, they're not hurting anybody. They're just stealing whatever. But that it's going to make enough people sick that they're going to then go the other way and say beat the shit out of anybody who steals a toothbrush from Walgreens,
Yeah.
Do you think that
you're getting it's leading to a very mixed up, perspective. What are the cops supposed to do? Do you want them to be bringing these guys in for, the small process crimes, or do you want it, okay, you're going to be bringing them in. They're not going to pay bail. Not going to have bail. Put them right out. Yeah. It's almost like a revolving door of justice. I mean, I don't want to have to say it. They joked around that with The Simpsons years ago. We're talking about, what was it? The Mayor Quimby wants revolving door prisons. And, you're seeing people go in, and he's so bad. He even let Sideshow Bob out,
hilarious.
You're going to be damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, I have law enforcement in my family, and, my dad was a cop for 20 years. I mean, nothing remote what some of the big city, cops have to deal with. But he dealt with some crap, and I'm sure there was people he arrested multiple times, but he always gave them a fair shake. And, he never really had any of those kind of concerns. But you get some of these guys who are being told, I think the public's told one thing, and then, the first briefing they have, they could be told something else. Don't let anyone talk, back talk you or anything like that. You got cameras in your face all the time. And, it's a dangerous job, and in certain places, not worth the pay you're getting. I mean, that was a whole issue in New York City for a while. Guys men and women were graduating the academy, and right after we're going to the suburbs because New York City didn't pay crap. At least until I want to say had to be the end of the 2000s, before 2011, the cops were worried because they were okay, we're graduating. Because I've been to an academy graduation in New York City, which at the time I thought I was this might be the ultimate place for a certain thing to happen, because it's we're at Madison Square Garden day after Christmas. It's the academy. It's the mayor. It's all these things. I'm like, I want to be out of here. I want to go. But people were going out to Nassau County, Suffolk County right after, because they're getting paid 2-3 times the amount. They go to city I'm from growing up, Long Beach. I said Long Beach, by the time my dad retired in 98 with overtime, he was making $100,000 a year. That was in 98. Yeah. Damn. So now it's and it's who, it's things like that too. That's a huge part of it. But yeah, you look at some of these guys who are in these cities, they're doing multiple shifts of overtime. They're overworked. They're cranky as shit. And in certain cases, they might be tightly wound to begin with. So not to excuse it, but you're kind of just, you're lighting the powder keg at that point. So
yeah.
And Oakland still.
Sorry. Continue. Sorry. I know if you want to keep going, if you got more stuff about
it. Well, one of the people who comes up in here, because she was I believe the AG in California, was Kamala Harris, comes up. And at one point she doesn't want to prosecute the cops for, for excessive force. And then, cut to a few years later, probably because she knows she's going to run.
Yeah.
Flips the narrative. And, you look at some of these cases, some of these guys, needed to be prosecuted. And in other cases, you know what? Kick them off the force. Kick them off the force, give them, the version of a dishonorable discharge. This way they can't go into law enforcement ever again. Leave it like that. Because let's face it, you put some of these guys in jail who haven't killed anybody, not to excuse it, they're dead once they get on the inside. I mean, you're putting a target on their back once they, step foot in jail. and especially California is not known for their country club prisons, with the exception of I think Lompoc was the one that was like the club fed for a while.
Okay. Dude.
Yeah, so it's still crazy. I'm waiting to see what happens. This book only came out like a couple weeks ago. I'm going to check and see if they wind up, if they passed to be able to finally get that sort of government intervention off them. But there's, I think, Oakland, Baltimore, I think probably as a result of the Freddie Gray and then the gun trace task force corruption scandal that came out after. Ferguson, the one with Michael Brown.
Yeah.
They had their issues. Suffolk County, the county I live in, went through a whole thing with that. It had there was a guy named Jimmy Burke, who was the police chief, who was crooked and beating suspects and doing drugs, dating prostitutes. They even at one point thought he might have been the Gilgo Beach serial killer.
Oh my God.
So there was like a whole thing with that too. So it's like, yeah. They said he's not, but I have family who still believes he did it because they haven't caught the guy. It's been over 10 years since the Gilgo Beach serial killer. So yeah.
Well, so Cole, any thoughts, Colby, on Phil's research or any side ideas or experiences with police maybe that you want to talk about?
Oh, I could talk about that, but I wanted to first talk about Jerry Brown because
please.
Wasn't he kind of balls deep in the Laurel Canyon scene as well? Phil, you might know
dated
that.
Linda Ronstadt, I think.
Is that what it was? Because that's where I was.
Well, his father was the governor of California, Pat Brown. He's one of the he beat Nixon in '62. But yeah, Jerry Brown was like running around with like the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt. So yeah, he was definitely in the Laurel Canyon scene. And one of the books I read a couple of years ago during COVID, it was like a short book, but it was about Jerry Brown's impact on California the last time he was governor. And they're like, oh yeah, he sold everybody out. Like he sold out to make money. It was after I think after Schwarzenegger had finished serving his 2 terms.
Right.
So Brown's an interesting guy, but there's probably reasons why he never became president. And but one thing I will give him credit, he was the first person to mention Whitewater that wasn't a Republican. Call out Bill Clinton back in the day.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you guys might know this, is there an IQ cutoff, and not the good kind of cutoff, but like under the certain amount of IQ to be a cop? Is that real? I always hear people say that, like, you can't, if you're too smart, they send you back and maybe send you to the FBI or something. I don't know.
I just Googled it because
It's a good question.
It's just one of those things I've never really researched. I just hear a lot of people say it. So
Yeah.
I didn't know if anybody here had the answer to that.
Well, to be honest, I took so after 9/11 happened, I was going to school in Albany, New York, and they had an open NYPD test for the academy, and I took it. I think I got like an 85 on it, and they were asking me to come in and do all this stuff, but I was like 21 at the time, so I was kind of like, and I wasn't in good shape, so I was like, you know what? We'll wait. We'll pass it down the line. If I'm still interested, I'll do it. If not, it's fine. And I said, I passed. I said, my brother decided to take up that mantle, and he's been a cop for 16 years.
Is that in New York? He's a cop in New York.
NYPD. Yeah.
Does he like it?
He's good. I mean, he loves it. I mean, he's you know what? I think he didn't know that's what he was meant to do, but when he wanted to, like when he kind of set his mind to it, and I said, he could tell you. He works with you work with dumbasses no matter where you work. There's always going to be certain people, but I kind of agree that there are not even just dumb, but there are certain guys who are just ball busters as cops. Like I think they just came to be an authoritarian, and that's the job that lets them do it.
Yeah, it does attract that kind.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think IQ wise, I mean, my brother's pretty smart, so I don't, I'm smarter than him though. Let me at least get that out right there. to be honest. But no, he's really good, very intuitive. He's got the street smarts. But yeah, I think there's always going to be certain cops that are just like, you wonder, like, are you not familiar with the law book? Any sort of aspect for why an arrest could get tossed, and all these other things, and what makes a cop decide to go rogue. There's a story that he told me at one point, my brother, that one of the bigger corruption scandals was Michael Dowd, who was in, I think it was the 7-5 precinct. And he was one who later on was talking about he was doing cocaine off his dashboard and things like that. And he wound up getting busted. And I think he should have been doing life for what he did. And the message that they were taught in the academy was, it all started when someone gave him a cup of coffee, like that's where his road to corruption went. And, a lot of cops are skeptical, like, really? A free cup of coffee is going to turn me down to doing cocaine on the dashboard? And,
Yeah.
Was he driving when he did it off the dashboard?
Does anyone else hear Colby? Is Mike's rubbing or anything? Do you hear that, Oddman, or is it just me?
Yeah, it sounds like when you speak, it's like static.
Yeah. I don't know. I am so bad at audio, Colby. So if someone told me that, I would just unplug it, but I didn't know if.
Let me try that.
Yeah. Well, Oddman, why don't you do, if you have anything, or you do your, we'll speed away, siren away from police and onto your topic.
Okay. I kind of had a hard time because the thing I'm looking into, I think I've mentioned on your show a couple of times, is the Congress for Cultural Freedom. And so it's such a big topic, man. I wanted to do it about that, but I'm just not ready.
Okay.
So I know I mentioned on one of your shows about the city of London, kind of like the hidden city.
Oh, nice.
And so I feel like that would be the best one to do because my show comes out tonight on that. And
perfect.
I think that it, kind of ties into so many things. So basically, a lot of people know this, but I think a lot of people have just heard like a little bit about it. So we've heard for years that there are 3 cities that control the world: the Vatican City, of course, which is believable, Washington, D.C., and then the city of London. Well, so the city of London, there's 2 Londons. Like originally, there was just this little city of London that is, they call it the square mile. So the square mile is right kind of in the center. It is pretty much a square. And nobody really knows the origins, the date of when this city began. So really the only thing that we know really is that William the Conqueror came to that city. He conquered everything else. And when he came to that city, supposedly, it was just a city of merchants. And so he was allegedly so enthralled with this city that he decided that they could, he wouldn't conquer them. So he would give them, their sovereignty, and they could have their own rules, laws, police, mayor, and everything like that. So that was a long time ago, That was, yeah. So, it's really weird because like it says here, it's right on the river Thames, I think is how you say they're Thames, whatever. But, there are, I think, 2 different boroughs. Now there's the one side has 32 boroughs. The other side has, let me see here. Let me see if I can find it. 33 boroughs, of course. So it's right there in the center. It still has those laws and rules. I mean, some have changed over the decades, but it's still sovereign, and it's outside of Greater London. And many things makes it really unique is it is a banking hub. There are more banks in that little city than the rest of London in any other city, from what I've read.
Damn.
It's just bank after bank after bank. And you don't even think like a square mile is that big. But when you start looking at all the banks, the lists, it's mind blowing. And one of the other things that makes it really interesting is that the banks and the companies that are headquartered there, they get a say in the voting, and the banks make up 3/4 of the vote there. They do have some citizens who live there. It's a small amount. So, it's crazy, man. They have a motto. It's in, I think in Latin, it says Domine dirige nos, which translates to master guide us. Everything about this little city of London is just insane. The way it is governed, it has the Right and Honorable Lord Mayor as the head of the government there. And there's all these medieval guilds that go back to medieval times. And some they've turned into kind of like, philanthropic groups. Some are still in business. They call them livery companies. And wouldn't you know it, it is absolutely full of Freemasons. They have a new Lord Mayor every year, and nearly every Lord Mayor has been a Mason, but they have so many of their different governing heads and the people who work in these industries that are Masons. And a lot of people have read like Stephen Knight's books on Freemasonry, but if you haven't, I think they came out in the 80s, and he also did one on Jack the Ripper, where he connects the Jack the Ripper killings. He says he was a Freemason because they represented Freemasonic rituals. I haven't read that one, but I want to check it out sometime.
What's his name? I'm gonna have to check him out.
Stephen Knight. I think it's a P-H-E-A-N. But and he goes into detail in that first book about it's basically the whole book is about the government of this little town of England, this little city. And it even says Corporation City of London. You can see the signs. But he goes into how the whole government is just filled with Masons, and especially the different police forces. There's like several different police forces in there, and it's just like a good old boy network that goes back, eons. So another thing that makes it interesting is it has 14 dragons along the city at the entrances in different spots in the city. And the lore kind of goes back to a saint, I think his name was Gregory, St. George.
George,
St. George, yeah. So he was, he's depicted as a Templar knight, and in the story, he saves a maiden from a dragon. It's odd that the dragons are evil, right?
That's true.
They have the dragons all around the town. Some say, well, that's because he tamed the dragons. But of course, dragons are known in some, they have different symbology, but sometimes they're known as kind of like protecting wealth and gold and stuff like that, which would go right along with the whole, London city. Quickly, another really interesting fact is right there in downtown Corporation City of London was the Templars church, the main church that they worked out of, that they ran their banking empire out of.
No freaking way.
And of course, they're crazy. In like the cities, like where these dragons are, all except I think one, they have the city crest, and the city crest is it's a shield, a white shield with a red cross and a red sword. So you got the dragons on either side, and of course, the Templars have the red cross, and it's just really interesting. And like a lot of the different, and maybe it's just the angle, but several of those pictures of the crest I've seen, it looks like the cross is upside down to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Other people can look into that. But and one more thing. Well, two more things. I'll try to quickly.
Great.
Let's see. We talked about the Templars. We talked about the Freemasons. Right there where the old Freemason church is still there. It's a circular church. It's supposedly like patterned after the Jerusalem sepulchre, I think is how you say that.
Okay. Yeah.
Or sepulchre.
Yeah.
But anyway, that is the head of all law, basically. That's where the International Lawyers Guild runs out of. So you have law there now too. I mean, you talk about an important place that barely gets any attention. I watched this video, and this man went around this Corporation City of London asking people if they knew that this part of London was sovereign with its own laws, its own police, its own government. Nobody knew. They worked there, and they still, half of them didn't even know. So it's weird that they've been able to keep that secret. I guess it's something they don't really hide, yet they don't advertise it either.
Yeah.
There's one more thing that was important, and I'm forgetting it. Another thing. Lastly, it is one of the biggest tax havens in the world, because London has all these different islands like Bermuda and different places like that basically it runs. So, most of the money is not even in that little square mile. that's invested in these, these banks. They just use that place as to say, okay, this bank is headquartered here.
Right.
So,
that's why I was going to ask you that. So I figured that's what they did. Yeah.
So it's been estimated that at least 50 trillion is hidden. And the way they do it is they use these trusts. Like, we broke up trusts here to a degree early in the early 1900s with the oil and steel trusts and all that. But they still have trusts there, and the trusts are not really monitored, and you can't tell who owns the trusts. You can't even really tell what's in the trusts. So their laws are really lax. So it's an international banking hub, like people from all over the world, the United States, everywhere, put money into those. And I believe, after reading this, I wholeheartedly believe that a lot of these funds that come into places like Ukraine, in different wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, different things like that, I believe that a lot of money is being laundered into these untraceable trusts. And I think that's part of what is going on with all these wars.
Damn, dude. That was good. Colby, we'll test. Well, you your thoughts. See if our mic's fixed.
How does that sound?
Better. Yeah, definitely better. Good. Now I just hear your sweet, dulcet tones.
It starts to. You remembered the adjective from yesterday.
Yes, exactly. I knew I knew I heard that word yesterday, so that's where it was. Yeah.
Well, if it starts doing that again,
now.
just let me know, and I can switch to the mic on my webcam. I'll just have to talk louder. But
no, it's good.
Yeah, pretty much everything I've learned recently about these color revolutions in the Ukraine war was from listening to Oddman. So, I mean, anything I can say about that, I definitely think that it is a money laundering operation of sorts. There's a lot of things going on, but that's definitely the main driver there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, man. I appreciate that very much.
I love you on Boiler Room. I think that's where I heard you first, because I've been listening to them for a while. So
cool. Yeah.
It took me a while to make the connection when I heard you start doing stuff with Jack. It's like, I know this guy.
Oh, cool, man. They're great people.
Dude. Phil, any thoughts on this? The city of London? Isn't that what it's called, Oddman? Like London proper, or London proper's the real?
I guess that would be called London proper if it's the original, I guess. I don't know. I'm not.
So any thoughts on London proper, Phil?
So I'm thinking this is just a connection to one of the things we were talking about earlier. I think it's in London. Blackfriars Bridge.
It's in London. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's where they found the Vatican banker Roberto Calvi hanging in an impossible
bricks in his pocket.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I just know just a teeny bit about it, that one subject, but if you think about how long that place has been there and the history that's happened there, like big time, important history, important people throughout history who've done all kinds of crazy things. And it's happened right there. They say too, I'll say quickly too, they say that allegedly the Queen is not even allowed to enter the City Corporation of London without an invitation. And if she does, she has to walk behind the Honorable and Right Lord Mayor. And you should see, this guy gets pulled around in this cart, this horse and carriage.
Look it up.
And this thing it's so detailed and golden. I mean, just unbelievable detail. It must have cost, millions of dollars, and he's dressed to the nines.
I'll put it on the screen if this is, and then sorry, Phil, you can go.
Oh no, I'm good. No, it's can't do better than what Oddman just did. It's awesome.
Well, I found that crazy, Oddman, that you said that since William because I've been reading. Someone sent me Dan Jones books I was reading. I can't remember who. I thought it was one of you, but maybe it wasn't. But
I just read one of his.
Oh, maybe it was. Yeah. Okay. So he talks. I never knew like the Plantagenets and William the Conqueror was he wasn't even English. He's French, but he conquers England back for the Normans from the Vikings. But so that's fascinating, dude, that one place has lasted since. I mean, the amount of turmoil that's happened in England and people being overthrown and revolutions and what have you, and yet this little 1 square mile has remained untouched. That's power, dude. That's a lot of power to be able to withstand, a total monarchical overthrowing the king and still have the same power and the same rules. Like, what could exist there that would give you that kind of power, you know?
I just suggested I get into it in the show a little bit, but look into the details of how their government is ran. It's amazing. It's like going back to the Middle Ages or the medieval times, and it blows my mind that they've been able to do that. You're right. That shows you that the money power is more powerful than the kings and the armies and different things like that. And I'll say too quickly, last thing I'll say about it is the Rothschilds, excuse me, their main hub is right there too. So
no way.
Their main one in England. Yeah.
Dude. Wow. There's something like, I can't figure it out yet, but because I don't know history well enough, but there's something weird like with the Vikings and Europe and the king. There's just so much information there. And there's like all these weird connections and I can't figure, but I don't even have like an idea. I can't even formulate my thought on it, but there's just like all these weird, like how the same group kind of started England, started Italy and Russia, and like it's just so weird. Like these Viking descendant, I don't know. It's so crazy. So if anybody that knows more than me, please solve this riddle for me because I can't figure it out. But anyway, that was, again, I can't even I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's just very odd and just so many people connected. It's crazy.
Interconnections of history.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's exactly. Thank you. Made my thought sound somewhat palatable. So thank you, Phil. So Colby, we'll let you go with your this is working out great, dude. I'm loving this. So your topic, Mr. Colby.
Well, I kind of want to talk about Elon Musk. Is it doing it again?
Let's do it again.
All right, here.
Your topic's so good.
Let's switch over to
I'm sorry, dude. Whenever Oddman tells me my mic's not working before we start, I always am like, oh God. Or whenever someone, I don't know, what am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do? I just have a box here. I'll just turn it off. That's all I have. People mess with like crazy stuff, the settings. I don't even know how to get to the settings.
Sometimes I think if you kind of refresh it, I don't know if you'll have to rejoin though. I'm not sure how that works. But I had to do that a couple times.
That's my level. Yeah. Unplug and yeah.
Is it still doing it?
Oh, no, it's perfect.
See, I took off the echo cancellation. I've never tried that before, so hopefully that does the trick. If not, I'll just switch to this.
No, it's perfect now. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to talk about Elon Musk a little bit, and I know it's not exactly historical, but I did pull up this article about Technocracy Incorporated.
Awesome.
And that is an organization, if Oddman's got his bell ready, it was founded in 1933.
Ooh.
In New York, actually.
What's it called? I'll pull them up if I can.
It's Technocracy Incorporated. And so it's kind of fitting right now with Davos going on because Elon is, he's pretending he's one of us now. And he tweeted something about being against the World Economic Forum, but he actually was a young global leader, and this was in 2008. The only place you can really find it online now is a Bloomberg article that reported on it. And I think that they did that a couple years later, if I remember right. But it definitely is kind of weird what he's doing right now because he has also kind of come out against the vaccine, and he's claimed, and I don't know, I think within the last week he's claimed that he had very adverse reactions to the second booster.
Elon did.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He was saying he felt like he was going to die.
I'm sure everyone loved that.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact tweet, but for me, if he's so against it, why has he gotten his second booster? And
right, that's a good point too.
Also, something else people might not realize if they haven't looked into Tesla, which is a company that he actually pretended to start. He did not start that company, but they are 3D printing vaccines. So that's something. There's an article.
What?
In Reuters from. Let me see if I can get my tablet to.
So Tesla's in the pharma game.
Well, they're so it's like they're not printing the vaccine itself.
Okay.
Of course, this won't load right now.
Ah, it's okay.
It's a part that's necessary for the vaccines, and he is 3D printing that through Tesla. So, but really, the thing I wanted to talk about was this technocracy thing, and his grandfather was actually put on trial because they said it was like a communistic approach. So he was being charged for it. And
Elon's grandfather.
This is Elon's grandfather. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So when people, he's trying to put chips in our brains. He's pretending he's not part of the World Economic Forum.
Dude.
But his name's Joshua Haldeman, and he was the leader from 36 to 41. And this is before he moved the family to South Africa. Yeah.
So his grandfather was the leader of this technocracy movement.
Yeah, 3 years after its formation. So it formed in 33. He headed it from 36 to 41.
And then he was accused of being a communist.
Yeah, well, essentially. And here's just a little tidbit. But they wanted no politicians to be a part of this movement. It was all about scientists leading the charge, which the name of this article that I pulled up from CBC News is called In Science We Trust. The only thing is they don't have the S in science capitalized. So they're close to what's going on today. This article was actually only written in 2021, but it does report on the history of this. And I do recommend looking it up or reading the whole thing. It's a CBC News article.
Yeah, send me the link when like, you hear things passed on from your family, but never like a love for an obsession with technology from 19. That's like that's so weird, dude. That's so weird. People like baseball because their dad likes baseball, but people don't want a robot as a pet because their grandfather loved robots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's all nepotism at the end of the day, and I mean he's also tried to distance himself from his
Mike,
father.
I think.
Is it doing it again?
I know, dude. We were so close, so close. We'll once Colby gets that, then we'll pass it around to see. I think Oddman was the one that sent me that awesome clip video on it was like 5 minutes about Elon and his background and how he's like a made up story. Are you right here? You can try, Colby.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
perfect.
so this I think is my webcam mic. I don't know if the quality is good.
It's good. It's good. Yeah.
I mean, I basically got at the end of what I wanted to say. I also wanted to point out that he did go to college at the UPenn, the Wharton School, which is kind of just known as Deep State University. And everybody else that's come out of there has kind of gone balls deep into the establishment. He's no different.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of people in our community idolize this guy. I believe I got kicked off Twitter for stuff I was saying about him. They said that I was kicked off Twitter for calling Hassan Piker a cunt, which doesn't really make sense to me. But, at the end of the day, I'm back and I'm going to keep doing it. I don't know. I've made a rule now. I'm not going to go after anybody except for Elon. And if I get kicked off again, I'll know that's why. So
that's how a good scientist works.
Did you guys see what he said about not letting Alex Jones back on?
I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
About his baby dying in his arms. Yes. Yeah. So
Did you say it? Yeah.
He basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but they asked if he was going to let Alex Jones back on. And he said, my firstborn died in my arms, so I'm not going to let somebody on who makes money off the death of children. And then his wife, his ex-wife, but whoever he was with when he had that child, she said, yeah, he wasn't even in the same state when that kid died. So that's a bunch of horseshit, according to her. I mean, he said, she said, who knows? I think his entire life is a lie, so I tend to side with her on that.
Yeah.
Just on principle.
Interesting, dude. Phil, any thoughts on Elon? Well, I don't think we haven't talked in a while, so I haven't heard you talk about Elon. But I'm sure you got a boatload of things.
Yeah. When it comes to Elon Musk, you know what? I still think with Twitter, everyone sees him as like a savior. It's better than Dorsey. I said, well, I just didn't like Jack Dorsey on principle. You just see that guy, and he kind of conveys that ultra hipster douchebag sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Elon Musk, like what was it? The first time David Icke he let back on for like a day, and then once David Icke starts questioning Musk, he kicked him off.
I didn't know that.
Let it back on.
I didn't see that.
It was towards the end of last year. It was before the whole the vote with Trump, whether to let Trump back on.
Okay.
And David Icke was on for I think a grand total of 17 hours, and then got kicked off. And then he's back on again, but in and around then was when the whole Alex Jones thing started, and
Okay.
of course then you had the whole Kanye thing, and what you can say, can't say. And I said, I think he's just gonna, whenever he's prodded, he'll kick someone off. That's the way it's going to be. I don't see anything about him being a free speech, pioneer or anything like that. I said he's a poser. I said even with the companies. I mean, like Tesla, like what was outside of the name, where at least the name was based on someone who was an inventor. What have the Teslas been known for besides crashing or blowing up, or they're not really good. So
they use Tesla technology. They use Tesla technology with wheels.
You sound like a robot, Colby. Your mic. I'm sorry, dude.
We said the Musk word.
That's probably it, dude. He would have, if anyone has the ability, Elon Musk would have the capability to manipulate your mic. But
oh man,
go ahead, Oddman. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think there may be a 3-letter organization that's jamming your signal, bro. you said the wrong things, man.
Oh, dude. Like, this is gold. What's happening, dude? Someone's messed with your mic. Like, maybe it was your dog, Colby. He bit it or something. But any else? I think do you have anything to add on Elon, Oddman?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've always been somewhat skeptical of him, just because it's like, he wanted attention so badly, and I think I've said this before on your show, but it's just like this cult of personality built up around him. It seemed like quickly, but maybe it didn't really happen that quickly. But by the time I was paying attention, he had like a cult following for sure. And that seemed weird to me. But then, he would make these, I mean, he still does, I guess, make these kind of basic bitch, tweets, and like thousands of people instantly, like big names, immediately liked it, like him. And so he's definitely I think like, I don't know if culture creator is the right word, but definitely someone who is an influencer. And, after reading this book, well, 3 books now about this cult, it's Congress for Cultural Freedom. I mean, it pulled everything together for me, man. Like, you look at the OSS, they had Astors, they had all your top names in the OSS, your top financial families, at least most of them. And they controlled everything, or they had their hand in everything. And then, that book explains how, when it turned CIA, they had over 160 foundations that worked through them that they would give money to. And so, it was kind of a disguise for them. And they had one called the Farfield Foundation that was nothing but a way to launder money for the CIA and the Congress for Cultural Freedom. And these were all like left-wing democratic socialist former communists that were in it. Where was I going with that? Just the fact that so many very popular writers, conductors, musicians, different people like that, and people in industry were a part of that it makes me think that's still going on. And who knows, maybe even Musk could be something like that.
Interesting, dude.
I mean, he is working, with the government on a certain level. So
yeah. Phil, go ahead.
Just a quick question, Oddman. Congress Cultural Freedom, was that Cord Meyer who was in the CIA that was connected with that?
Yeah, he was definitely a part of that for sure. Yeah. It was headed up by a bunch of mostly Eastern European Jews who had fled communism, who had been communists, and a few Americans, and people like Arthur Koestler, Hannah Arendt, Bertrand Russell. That was like one of their big names. Lord Bertrand Russell, Fabian Socialist.
Wasn't he the guy that said, see, I know Jay Dyer cites Bertrand Russell, and I read he was like, kind of like he's a bad guy, but he had that, I think he has the quote that said in 100 years, the poor people will be eating fake food, fake everything, while the elites will have the real food. And he wrote that in like I want to say like 1930s, right? Is that the right time frame? Or not?
Yeah, I would say so, around that time. And he was very, like, he was the head of the London School of Economics and Social Sciences, which is, created by the Fabians. He was the head for a while. 2 Rothschilds have been the head of that. You know, I think I've talked about it before, but David Rockefeller went there, George Soros went there. I mean, it's a place for very powerful people. But you see how that weird connection goes from there to the Council on Foreign Relations to this Congress for Cultural Freedom, which goes directly to the CIA because it was funded directly by the CIA, and they were putting on concerts, writing plays. They had magazines that were in like various countries that they would put out, and it was all. The thing is, it wasn't like pro-American kind of stuff. They were pretty anti-traditional American, almost all of them, but it was trying to convince them that socialism and democratic socialism is the way to go, democracy rather than communism. After the Stalin, you know, all the deaths under Stalin.
So you say that. So they're trying to like propagandize for a democratic socialist state as opposed to a
communist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know so little about Stalin. I bet Phil knows lots about Stalin. But in one of the books I read, they said how he was disliked. He was a more of a nationalist than a communist, and so that's why. And so I just think that so my mind goes to any nationalist leader of our past. They are demonized. The Guatemalan guy. Who's the guy in the Congo? They killed. He was they called him a communist. Lumbuga, something that's horrible. I'm butchering that name, but
Lumumba.
Lumumba. Yeah. And so when I read that Stalin was a nationalist, I was like, wow, like now it makes me question what real, because they hate that, scares them so much that, so I don't know. I just found that interesting that he was more of a nationalist as compared to the other Soviet Union leaders or creators,
I honestly don't know a lot about him. I need to look more, but I know that a lot of people died under him. And I think that was supposedly why they turned against communism, which, they like half of them are Trotskyites. Like Irving Kristol was one of the biggest ones. That was Bill Kristol's dad, who they say is like kind of like the father of modern conservatism, and he was very liberal as opposed to traditional conservatism. Because he was a former Trotskyite, so he never really. Him and Buckley, they were kind of like I don't know, like. What would you call it? Like establishment conservatives, like snobby types who hated the John Birchers and that kind of more traditional conservatism.
Interesting, dude. I had no idea Billy Crystal's dad was like a politician.
Well, I don't know if he was a politician, but he was an author, and he was the one that I believe Phil might know this better than me, but I think he coined the term neoconservative or neocon, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh. I think so. Yeah.
He's got a book called that. So,
dude, man, he should have made an appearance and analyzed this or analyzed that. Then I would have known this.
Different Bill Crystal.
Oh, different Bill Crystal. Oh, and that doesn't.
Those guys kind of look alike too. It's weird. Have you ever noticed that?
Well, I'm glad you specify it because I would have went to bed tonight thinking, all right, sweet. Billy Crystal's dad's like a political guy. Who knew?
Fun fact: Billy Crystal's from my hometown.
No way.
Wow.
Swear to God, he went to school with my uncle. So
that's hilarious, dude. That is a good movie. Analyze whichever first one. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Where they show Appalachian, the mob meeting getting busted up. That's one of my favorite scenes.
Right, and I think you were the one that you were on my show talking about that meeting, the time that went down and how they got caught because they had all those fancy cars.
Pretty much, I mean, the way they show that in the movie isn't that far off from what happened. I mean, it went pretty much exactly the way that happened.
And that was the only reason why when you were talking about it, I was like, I feel like I know this story was because of that damn movie. So perfect. Well, dude, this was we're at an hour, so I'm glad. I didn't want to do my topic. I wasn't prepared as well as you guys. So. Colby's and the CIA's, they're like, we're done, dude. We're gonna knock down Colby's mic even further. So we'll sign off. So where can everyone find you? Look at your book reviews, all that kind of stuff.
Twitter, I'm at Vic Foster. I do reviews for the San Francisco Book Review and book lists. I'll have to drop my book blog.
Yeah, you have to.
I'll have to do those, and I got to write one for what did the one I just finished? Fiction one. Heat. Heat 2. They did a sequel to the movie and did a book version with Michael Mann, and it was actually really good. It was like a sequel and a prequel. So
that's dude, that's so great that so you definitely have to post your like books that you're reading or whatever. You can be like Lex Friedman. Did you see his post about that, Phil?
No. I mean, I've heard his name, but I don't know.
He's like a Joe Rogan spinoff. Lex, he's like real he hangs out. He's like Elon Musk, but even less exciting. But he like on the New Year's, he put like a book list of what he was going to read. And it's like a book a week, Phil. And like, I'm making this up, but like War and Peace. And then the next week, like he's going to read War and Peace. And like there's no way you could read unless that's all you're doing. Unless you're not, you could not read like some of these books he put on there in 1 week. Like they're like 60-hour, 80-hour books, like it's but so that's why I made that. I'll have to send you that tweet because it's ridiculous. Like he got torn apart. Like, dude, you're not gonna be able to. You can read Of Mice and Men in a week, but you can't read, some of these.
Telling you, we got to get a book club going.
Yes, dude, I know. We really do. But Oddman, where can they find you and all those things?
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on. I'm sorry if I rambled on too much. I always feel like I do, but
No,
you know how us, all of us guys, we got so much to say, but and I wanted to hear what Colby had to say. So hopefully we'll talk to him again, but so
now.
If anyone wants to catch up with me, just go to either Twitter or Instagram _the Oddman out, and in the profile it's got all my links in it, the links to the podcast, and I do some BitChute videos and stuff like that too, so check it out.
Love it, dude. And Cole, we'll see, is it going to work for the signing off?
Let's find out.
Yes, dude, of course.
All right. Thank you, Lord Elon, for allowing me my moment of exit. I can be found on your website, Elon, at conspiracy_play. That's my new handle. Conspiracyplaytime.com is the website for the podcast. I also do a weekly show called Disinfobation, just about current events and stuff. And Oddman, I'd love to work with you on my podcast at some point. I saw you followed me on Twitter. I'll shout you out. I'll give you a DM at some point.
Absolutely, man. I'd be glad to.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot. We'll have to do this. This was much. I enjoyed this way more than I learned so much stuff. So, guys, thanks for stopping in the chat and everything. And you have a good night. I'm gonna go take my dog out and hopefully he poops. So take care. I'm Jack Allen. Have a good night.